Hi, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. I'm Lady TrenettWilson. I'm a social historian and your lecturer. Very excited about our lesson today. This is the Carnival Cruise, and everybody has heard of the Carnival Cruise. Did you know this man here, Arnold Donald, is the CEO? Well, today we're going to talk about another CEO of a shipping company. He was known as one of the greatest black nationalists in history, but the story of his shipping line often goes hidden behind his story, which was magnificent and incredible within itself. Join me today for our lecture on Marcus Garvey and his Black Star Line shipping company. Marcus was born on August the 17th, 1887, in a place called St. Anne's Bay, which was in Jamaica, and it was a British colony. Now, I have a whole nother video, a more long form video about Marcus Garvey. And the reason I did it this way, because I only want to talk about the Black Star Line in this one. So we won't go into a lot of his childhood, his history. That's for the other video. But just suffice it to say, when he was born, his parents weren't broke. He was able to go to school, so many things that other people were not able to do. And I think that's what birthed that vision to even have a shipping line, to think on that level in 1919. He reportedly named it the Black Star Line after the White Star Line Company, which was the parent company to the Titanic. Might have should have been a little hint because we'll get to the end of the story. But suffice it to say, he founded it on June the 27th, 1919. He incorporated it in Delaware, and he had $500,000 that had been raised through his Universal Negro Improvement Association. They also called it UNIA. Now, the way they were able to raise this money is that the UNIA members would purchase a share. So, at only 6 months in business, the BSL board or the Black Star Line board recapitalized the company at $10 million. That would have been like $176 million today. The naysayers were shocked. Didn't nobody think he was going to be able to do what he was doing. From the money that he generated, he was able to open up a string of grocery stores, restaurants, a steam laundry, and a publishing house. He also was the publisher of a a newspaper called Negro World. And Negro World was a very long running magazine for him. It was distributed all over the world, and he had over like 30,000, 40,000 subscribers to his Negro World. So he was the YouTube before YouTube was YouTube. I have to say, this man was an absolute serial business owner and entrepreneur. So it's not shocking that he would own a shipping line, but to think again on that level of how did he plan to get the black people who wanted to go back to Africa, and then build an economic system by having a shipping line to make sure they were never without what they needed. So after founding the company, Garvey bought the first of four ships. We'll talk about three of them now and the last one afterwards. This was only 3 months after they opened the business. Now, their first ship was called the Yarmouth. Now, the Yarmouth was a ship that was actually in World War One, and it was not in the best of shape, but it actually turned out to be their best ship, and he had his dream come true, which was to have an all black crew, a black captain. So it took off for the first time and it made it back without breaking down. But that wouldn't be the case for the rest of these ships. The next boat he bought was called the Shady Side, and it definitely had the right name because it just sailed around the Hudson River for really no apparent reason. But we figured out why it didn't move from the Hudson River, because it sprang a hole and the boat sank. So Garvey was losing some money and losing it fast. I have a friend, and what she says is boat stands for about another thousand, and it was costing him thousands. So he tried his hand at a yacht this time. Now, this yacht was called the Kanawha, and Garvey renamed it the Antonio Maceo. Well, Soon as he got this one, the boiler blew up and it promptly unalived the man who was working on it. So that one ended up being horrible as well. In the first 3 years, they had spent over $200,000, which would be about $3 million today, on broke down boats. The Black Star Line was struggling financially, but not only financially. Do you know the FBI had placed all these FBI agents within his organization? They really wanted to see him fail because we're talking about the ship right now. But when you see the video on him, you'll see what a black nationalist he was. And so the American government did not want to see that happen. They put the agents in there, and what they would do is they would do things to try to mess up the boats. So these are black FBI agents. And they reportedly threw foreign matter in the fuel, which damaged the engine. This was according to historian Winston James. In the end, the Yarmouth was the only one that ever did anything. It sailed from the US to Cuba. But the thing about it was carrying whiskey. But they could not bring the things off the boat because they didn't have the proper permits to unload the boat in Cuba. So coconut spoiled, all that stuff spoiled. So his vision was really going awry. Just when he thought it couldn't get worse, in 1919, Hoover made his move. So remember all those black FBI agents that they had planted in his organization. Well, he was trying to raise some more money to buy another boat for the Black Star Line. But when he advertised for the people to invest, he didn't put the picture of the boat that they currently own. He put the picture of the boat that they were trying to buy. The boat was called the Orion. Now, they didn't own it at that point, but they were in a deal or trying to make a deal for it. But Hoover said since they didn't own it, it was false advertising. So in 1922, Garvey stood trial. And while on trial, he admitted, I don't know why his lawyer let him say this, but he said $600,000 or $17 million today blew in the wind. He couldn't account for where the money was spent, and he couldn't give the money back to the investors. I don't think he did wrong, but the government said that he did. The other three people who were on trial with him were found not guilty. The only one who was found guilty was Marcus Garvey. How do you have three people on trial and you only find this one man guilty? After being found guilty, he appealed and he asked for bail during his appeal. And he was out of jail for 2 years after paying a $15,000 bond. His group raised the money. They also raised the money for him to buy one last boat while he was out on bail. So this is the last boat that he bought. It was called the SS General G.W. Goethals, and he renamed it SS Booker T. Washington. And this one was bought in October 1924. Despite his really great work and him continuing to give back to the black community, in 1925, it was time for him to go to jail. While in jail, the UNIA continued to fight for him. He was writing letters and they were writing letters, but he stayed in jail for 2 years between 25 and 27. So 1925 to 1927. While in jail, his group began to decrease, the money began to decrease. So he had to mortgage his place called Liberty Hall. That's where they met. He had to sell the boat that he had just bought because you remember the other ones were already gone. So he had to sell the SS Booker T. Washington. And he was very upset. He was very ill also in prison. He was always had colds and bronchitis. He ended up with the flu. People were petitioning to get him out of jail. But Coolidge didn't let him out until December the 3rd. And when he let him out, he immediately deported him back to Jamaica. When he was released, there were about 1,000 of his members there as he got on the boat to depart back to Jamaica. In January of 1940, Marcus Garvey had a horrible stroke. In June, of the same year, he had another stroke, but this time he passed away. Now, I left out a lot about Marcus Garvey's life because this was about the boats. But I'll have a new video just about Marcus Garvey if you want to find out more about his life. I hope that you enjoyed today's lecture. My sources were The American Experience, The Origins of Rum Row, and Wikipedia. And as always, our shows are for entertainment and education only. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and tune in for another great episode of Royal Black and Elite.